Well,
Let's start it all
good.
over.
All right, guys. Welcome to the DDM podcast, and I'm here with Jeff Donati, and obviously Jelani and Brian Barnhill. Is that how you say your
that's
last
right.
name?
Yeah, pretty
All
simple.
right.
So, steering angle. How important has steering angle been to you through your progression through grassroots into Pro-Am, now into Pro 2? When did you switch to WiseFab and why? What did you feel it did for you?
So, steering angle is an interesting topic in drifting because I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions for people that are beginning, people that have been doing it for years. I mean, I drifted first year, like I said, stock knuckles. Second year, cut knuckles. Abercrombie Motorsports, whatever, cut knuckles and some tie rods. Third year, I did a GK Tech front angle setup. Mm-hmm. And then when I moved into when the car was blue in Pro-Am, that's when it had WiseFab on it the first time. And steering angle has never been something I cared about. Just like power, just like, stuff. It's unnecessary. Past a certain point, it's dumb. I run my bump stops on my WiseFab, and I always have done this all the way out because nobody needs that much angle.
So what he means by that is he's running the least possible angle that the WiseFab can achieve.
Yeah.
So it's not running max angle, it's running the least angle actually.
Yeah, so steering angle is not what I would try to, go for in a car. It would be steering feel. And that's the reason why I went with WiseFab because, I had always struggled with binding or it just feeling weird throughout the, range of motion. And I don't care that WiseFab gives you, first when people think of WiseFab, they just think of angle, big angle, big angle. And I think a lot of people buy WiseFab because they think, oh, more angle means I'll be a better driver or something. I don't understand how anybody can come to that conclusion, but people do. The only reason I did it is because the geometry changes that they make just makes the steering really smooth. Yep. There's no over centering, there's no fuss, there's no binding. It just works, and that's the reason why I love WiseFab. Not because of the angle whatsoever, just because of the feel.
And the adjustability.
A
lot of these other angle kits don't give you the KPI adjustment. A lot of people don't know what KPI is. KPI is kingpin inclination. And look that up. That's huge. Your front steering angle kit can affect your rear grip tremendously, and that's what the KPI can do for you. You give your Ackerman adjustments. You can make the car super aggressive on transition. You can make it more flowy. You can make it crab. You can do a lot of things. But the thing, I've worked on cars that run WiseFab, PBM limit brake, GK Tech. It was never steering angle. What he just said. We never did it for max angle. We did it for max adjustment on steering feel. So every style is different. Some people like to transition slow. Some people like to transition fast. Having the capability to adjust that is nice. And there's pros and cons to that even within itself. But it was always about the adjustability, not having the max angle. I can tell you personally, most of the cars in FD are not running max angle. You can chuck a car 90 with only 60 degrees of steering angle. Having 70 means nothing. So, and then in order to use the 70, you almost can't have a front sway bar. You got to run pizza cutter wheels or poked way far outside of the body because they'll run into everything. And the car usually has to be on smaller wheels up front or raised up to keep it from getting into the bodywork and stuff. It ends up with this really wompy, goofy looking thing. So there's angle and there's usable angle. And usable angle is about 60. You get past 60, what are you doing? You're probably correcting if you're using past 60. Once again, you watch Julian Jacobs, you watch Nakamura, you watch all these dudes who chuck these really insane, gnarly backwards entries. They don't have crazy steering angle kits on those cars. They're driving committed. Those cars have excellent steering feel, I can tell you that, but they're driving the cars committed. The con to the steering angle kits, the big angle kits, the WiseFab is when you do crash, sometimes you can break a lot of things. The WiseFab LCA is pretty beefy. It's pretty brolic, and a lot of people who crash end up tearing apart the front cross member. So now you end up having to replace your $2,500 angle kit and your front cross member. Some of the advantage of staying cut and weld is you have a sacrificial $50 lower control arm on that car that you can mod a little bit, but you don't want to box that whole control arm. You don't want to have that whole thing plated in. Leave that back section of it where that bushing is open. Let it die. That's a $50 control arm.
Brody Go Bullet has a 1,000 horsepower car, one of the nicest S14s in the world, in my opinion. and he runs extended stock lower control arms and cut knuckles.
Yep.
That car works.
And he
Really?
Yep.
places
Consistently
really well,
high.
consistently high in Pro 2.
When Yokoi came to FD, that S15 had factory rear LCAs. It had factory rear floating calipers. It had a cable handbrake. It had stock front LCAs and a cut weld knuckle up front. And he got Rookie of the Year and consistently got on the podium a couple rounds. He would have been on the podium in Orlando, but his car caught on fire because they left the fuel filler cap off the back of the gas tank. And he drove super aggressive, and it was cut and weld knuckles. You know, some advice for some of you guys getting started in grassroots and really entry-level pro-am is you don't have to rush to these big, expensive angle kits. I'm not trying to take business away from those guys, but if you're thinking about having spare parts, because that's one of the questions we have on here is, you know, what extra parts do you carry? We're going to ask him about that. It's easy to keep 4 sets of stock LCAs around if they're just extended 25, 50, 45, 15, 10 millimeter. You could be $500 into multiple sets of factory LCAs sitting around, Maxima inner tie rods, outer tie rods, and you rarely ever see anyone break a factory knuckle that's been cut and welded if it's done properly. So maybe 2 sets of knuckles, and you can have all of that for half the price of buying one WiseFab kit. And whereas there's people who are going into grassroots events or Grid Life's really serious grassroots events that you prep your car for all year, and you'll go out and tire drop one time and wreck that expensive angle kit and be on the sideline. Or you could have a set of stock stuff, multiple sets. You could wreck it, easy to replace, be back on track.
Yeah.
Another thing to consider, if your LCA fails, you're taking a lot of pressure off your coilover, and it's less chance of bending your coilover. The stronger that LCA is, all of that force is going to go into the shock shaft of your coilover, especially in McPherson strut, and you're going to damage the coilover quicker also too, and that will really take you out of the game.
Yeah.
So it's just more things to think about. I'm not preaching against spending the money on the big angle kits, but more so, why are you buying it? It's not for the big angle. It's for the feel. It's for the tunability. And if you're not at the point in your drifting career where you feel like you need that, then keep it simple. Jeff runs WiseFab V1, but it's also not stock WiseFab V1. So even though we have the great WiseFab on your car, what did you do to it? What changes did you make to it? Who did the changes? What did you get it?
So Nate Hall, he runs a company called Bink Industries. He used to crew for Odie Boschke's.
He's crewing for Alec Hollindale this year.
He's crewing for Alec, and he did
Mike Essa.
last year he did Essa.
Yep.
So he might be doing both in a way, because he said he was super busy this year. But
and I think the Swanson kids maybe
yeah.
too.
But anyway, so he has a lot of knowledge of WiseFab, because Odie's a dealer for WiseFab, and Odie always runs it. So they made some modifications on Odie's car that worked well enough that he decided to start selling as like a service for everybody else. So basically what he does is he bends the lower control arm 15 degrees at like the end. So the way that WiseFab works is there's like a control arm, and then like the knuckle kind of like goes over the control arm like this, and there's a heim joint.
Yeah.
Well, at certain angles, it's like this. So when you turn, it would bind, on this. So he bends it, so it's like this now again.
Basically, just make sure that the ball joint stays parallel with the.
It's just
the
no
plane
binding.
of the
It's
knuckle.
literally, you can see on my control arm where the knuckle would hit it when it was stock. But he also cuts the knuckle and welds basically a new plates on the bottom where the tie rod connects to it. So what that does is it makes the steering more linear. So if you're going from lock to lock, say you do a perfect transition lock to lock, and you measure the rate of the steering wheel, it's not going to be linear. It's going to speed up and slow down as you go through that range.
Yeah.
He changes that geometry just a little bit to make it linear, so the steering wheel is going to stay at a constant, velocity the whole time. It's just a little bit more predictable.
Yeah.
He makes a cool little rack relocation subframe crossmember thing, so the rack's super easy to get out, and it's moved forward like 45 millimeters, and it gets rid of WiseFab's offset rack spacers.
Yeah.
Which are problematic for pretty much every application. And
The high clearance front sway bar.
yeah, he does sell a high clearance front sway bar. So a lot of people, WiseFab isn't made to run a front sway bar, but he sells a kit to add one. So that's a nice thing that we added as well. He's pretty much touched a lot of things on my car. He rebuilds the steering rack.
Anti-squat correction.
Anti-squat correction in the back, which is some geometry stuff that is definitely not necessary for anything close to grassroots or even pro. I could argue you don't even need it for Pro 2.
We
Don't
took it off
do
Pro
it.
2.
Yeah, don't do it.
Too much grip. Don't do it.
Yeah, unless you're trying to like pop wheelies on like a 225 Kenda.
Right.
You don't really need it.
And he also makes an attachment to be able to make the stock rear sway bar adjustable.
Yeah, so you can take the stock S chassis rear sway bar and turn it into a 3-way adjustable with the Heim joint, so it's pretty nice.
Thank you, Nate.
Yeah, he's really putting the team on his back for the S chassis high performance pro racing community.
S chassis savior.
He's the S chassis god, de facto god. Pretty much everything god.
We were talking about power steering stuff earlier. Like,
Yeah, he does a lot of power steering
the
development
amount of
too.
info we got from him to be able to really dial in our power steering.
Yeah, he's
Yeah, so look up Bink Industry.
Bank Industries.
You want the rad. You're also better off messaging him because a lot of the cool stuff he makes is not listed on his website.
Yeah, he doesn't. Oh, he makes a lot of stuff that is not on his site.
Not on the website. So you gotta hit him up like, yo, where's he? Where you get the good at? What's good?
Yeah.
Heard you got that fire. You got that dank. So yeah. So just something to think about with the steering angle. Even though Wise Fab is good, it's still not God until Nate touches it. So yeah, like.
But I think the big thing is to translate. You do it for the feel,
You do it for the feel,
don't do
not
it
for the angle.
not for the angle.
Angle is not going to make you a better drifter.
You use 70 degrees of steering angle for 2.5 seconds on entry trying not to spin out.
If you can't make it around a track with a stock knuckle, obviously this has an asterisk on it for if you're driving like a Camaro or something that has like 10 degrees of steering angle. But if you have a car with reasonable angle, like a 240
BMW.
stock or BMW, if you can't make it around the track with stock angle, you're not going to be able to make it around the track with more. I mean, you might be able to not spin out, but that's just putting a Band-Aid on a problem and not actually making you a better driver, which at the end of the day, the goal is always to become a better driver.
Yep.
That's why I did Pro 2. I mean, I didn't do Pro 2 because I thought I was going to, I wanted to be famous or something. I just did it because I thought that would make me a better driver. That's why I did Pro-Am. I didn't do Pro-Am because I wanted to, get my Pro 2 license. I did Pro-Am to become a better driver because there's only so much you can learn doing grassroots. And, I mean, grassroots is fun and grassroots is amazing, but for me, it was just all about the progression. And that's what drove me to do other stuff. It's just what's going to make me better. So.
Gotcha. So you've had quite a couple years of comp experience going on for you. I think we're gonna keep this more basic, so more pro-am stuff. But what are spare parts that you keep with you, and then when you're checking over the car? I know you said earlier you got like a huge checklist, but what are some like basics, like stuff that you should be checking to make sure you don't obviously break during comp and stuff like that?
So everybody should be checking their cars before they drift. Whether it's your first time out, grassroots, never even been to an event, or if you've been doing it for 10 years. Things you should always check. Are your wheel bearings good? Are your wheels tight? Are your lug nuts torqued? How's the important stuff? How's the steering rack? Is the steering rack good? How are the tie rods? The tie rods good? Is there any play in anything? Are all the bolts tight? Are the tie rods tight? Stuff like that. How's the all the brackets and control arms? Is that stuff tight? Is the car leaking anything that it hasn't been leaking before?
If it's leaking anything, you already messed up one of your reps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just basic stuff like that. Just anything that you would check before doing any sort of high performance driving with the vehicle. But spare parts, what did we carry in Pro-Am?
So axles were always a big one for us, and I think
Yeah.
that's probably true for any car because they do break. But a lot of it was identifying. Every car's got their own little quirks and things they break, but spare repair stuff, electrical stuff that gets ripped because you hit a cone or a pylon or something like that. Hoses, the standard thing, especially things that are easy to replace. Tune-up items, spark plugs, plug wires. Make sure if you don't have enough fluids, do a full fluid change of the track. In one case, we hit a cone and split the oil cooler or the power steering cooler in the front. And we actually didn't have a power steering cooler with us, and thankfully we were able to get one. But even if you don't, if you have that, I have a power steering cooler and oil cooler, and they might get damaged, if you can't afford the spare, you can probably afford some quick, easy way to bypass that. It keeps you on the track.
Have a male to male fitting. Hook those lines together.
Yeah, I mean,
bypass that cooler.
it's a slippery slope when you're talking about spare parts because you
Yeah.
could justify having
One
a
thing
spare
you-
of everything, but
One thing you guys have spare tie rods.
yeah, tie
Absolutely, tie
rods,
rods.
maybe like camber arms or something in the back. If you hit, I hit
Camber
somebody
toe
today,
arms.
I hit somebody this year, and I bent a camber arm, and those are relatively cheap and easy to find. You just buy 2 or whatever.
What's cool about a lot of the toe arms and stuff too is some of them aren't size specific. So
Yeah.
sometimes just having one spare toe arm is enough to get you through.
That's what we do. Like we only have one spare axle because they're the same on both sides.
Gotcha.
So you don't need 2 if you.
That's for the quick change, FYI.
Yeah, you definitely need to just kind of think about what your goals are. Because our first year of Pro-Am, we were just like, if something crazy happens, we're just going to go home. Like, it's not a crazy, it's not life or death. At the end of the day, it's just, you're there to have fun. And
There's
you need
definitely
to,
a balance.
yeah, you need to balance your budget and what your goals are. And just, yeah, basic stuff. I'd say maybe axles and tie rods or the basics. And then, oil, maybe some, wire crimpers and maybe, just a spool of some, random wire so you can just, fix stupid little electrical things, fuses.
Once you start getting pretty heavy in a Pro-Am, it's pretty easy to have some spare parts. Another thing to think about is the coilovers also are not size specific a lot of the times too. So you can have one spare front, one spare rear.
And you don't even need a full coilover because you can just buy the shock
Yep.
and then you can just change the spring over. Because in Pro-Am, stuff's not necessarily as strict. If you go, hey, I need to go change a coilover really quick because I just crashed, it's not. It depends on the organization, but it's not a big deal.
No, they want the purpose in Pro-Am is to produce good competition, so that way the drivers can grow. So most of these Pro-Am series want to work with you to make sure the competition is good and make sure that you guys are getting good solid battles and you're learning and you're gaining experience. It's not about winning by technicality,
Yeah.
So
and just think about historically, what have you broken before? If you historically break axles, then cool, maybe have 2 axles. But if you've never ever bent a tie rod, maybe you don't need 17 tie rods. Maybe you just need 1 because those are normally not side specific. Mm-hmm. So
after you've owned your own personal car too, you learn what is prone to fail on your particular car. So in our case, when we first started with the 2JZ, we threw serpentine belts often. We will almost sometimes change the serpentine belt every set of tires. So at the first round, we actually had a custom tool, a leverage bar, to lock the tensioner over very quickly and to be able to change the serpentine belt in a couple minutes. And sure enough, we developed that before we ever got into competition. Sure enough, we threw our serpentine belt at St. Louis in competition, had to call 5 minutes. Not only did the serpentine belt get thrown off, but it grabbed the upper radiator hose and pulled it off the radiator also, so we lost coolant. So we topped it off with coolant, put the radiator hose back on, bled the cooling system, and changed the serpentine belt in less than 5 minutes. And, we knew what the weak point was at that point, so we made sure we were ready to deal with it. If you're doing grassroots drifting, you don't have to have a specific tool to lock the serpentine belt and change it in 5 minutes. You can just, coast off track and casually take your time, have a drink of cold water, kick your feet up, kind of decompress before you get to work. So know your situation. If you're getting pretty heavy in the Pro-Am and you're one of those top tier drivers in your Pro-Am and you don't want to go out like that, be prepared. If you're just getting your feet wet in Pro-Am, maybe it's not that critical.
Yeah.
So just know your situation, like he was saying, and adapt to it. But these are all the things you want to consider when you want to start having a comp program. You don't need to have a spare T56 with you in Pro-Am. If you really grenade that transmission, it wasn't your day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say because I'm a never give up, never go home kind of guy, and we've changed the T56 at the track. But yeah, know what your goals are in the end, and there are certain common things, tie rods, stuff like that. But just make sure that you're not going to go out for some dumb, super preventable reason. And if you know it's a problem, you eat power steering pumps, you eat axles, just know what it is. And some of that just takes learning. Half that list I said we had, probably half of that comes from we saw a problem or we see something that comes loose. Axle bolts are on our list as a big check item because they just come loose.
Yep.
So probably half the list is because we've seen something, or we've either had a problem or come close to having a problem.
So,
But
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Common things I would say to check just from being around any drift car: lower control arm bolts, tie rod bolts into the rack, into the knuckle, and the tie rod itself that the locks the adjustment frequently come loose. All those things can come loose. Drive shaft to the diff flange, those can come loose. axles to the drive shaft flange, those can come loose, and any suspension out back. Those are what's called nut and bolt in the car. After the car comes back from the event, I usually like to tackle that when it gets back, not right before the event. You don't want to have to do that stuff in a time crunch. Do it when you're decompressing and you get back. First thing we do is put the car up on jack stands, do a quick inspection, just grab everything, shake for loose stuff, get your flashlight out, look for any cracks or anything like just obvious, and then grab your crescent wrenches and put a wrench on everything real quick. Takes half hour. And then when you come back to it the next day to work on it, you already know what you found, you know where to get started, and it's already up in the air on jack stands too, so like later on, you know, you could just start working on anything you need to work on. You may not have anything to work on. You might just want to give it a good clean and dig some of the rubber out of the car and stuff like that, you know. But yeah, as soon as you get back from the event, nothing but your car.
Have a notebook. Like
To go,
you said.
yeah, like to go off what Jelani was saying, when I get home from an event, I've done this for years. Like, I'm already tired, I'm already like dirty. I just put my car on jack stands. I just get it done, and then, you know, the next day I change the oil and stuff. And getting stuff done early is good because you're not rushing. You're not going to miss anything. You can take your time, and you know, if you nut and bolt your car in between every event, you know, that's something I'd recommend for anybody that drifts.
Anybody.
But so a pro-am driver, say you nut and bolt your car in between every event, say you break something, you're going to know exactly the size wrench you need. You're going to know exactly how to get it off because you've been putting a wrench on it every week or every 2 weeks, you know. So there's really nothing that can be bad about, you know, one day I'll change the oil and trans fluid, and then the next day I'll come out and, you know, just put a wrench on everything and take my time and just look stuff over, inspect some hoses, anything weird leaking, anything, you know, funky, and then, you know, just prepare stuff early. Get packed a couple days ahead, you know, because, you know, the more you're rushing closer to the event,
The more you miss.
the least, you know, the less successful you're going to be. So,
Hey, Johnny, how's it feel to forget tie rods?
Yeah, we were terrible about having spares at one point, and the one spare thing we did have an abundance of are tie rods for the WiseFab. And for the people who don't know, WiseFab uses Volkswagen Passat in their tie rods. So we had bought a lot of these things. We get out to St. Louis, and we were rushing before St. Louis, and we get the car off the trailer. I look, tie rod's bent. Darn, not a big deal. We'll get the toe plates out, change this bad boy a couple minutes, go in the trailer. You might know where that Rubbermaid container went. Oh, the one thing that we do have an abundance of, tie rods, got left in Ohio, and we're in St. Louis.
that happened to me at St. Louis in Pro-Am, the first event in 2017. I broke both axles at the same time, just doing a burnout and not even drifting. And I had spares. I was ready for it. I was like, all right, we'll get the spares out of the truck. And I was like, oh, we don't have spares. And that almost ended our day.
On that note, fun fact for you guys, once you start getting up over 300 horsepower, your drift car does not like standing burnouts.
Yeah,
Stop doing them.
Standing burnouts give me anxiety. Like, I never do them. I hate when I see people do them.
You guys ever wonder if you watch like Pro 2 or Pro 1 and they go in the burnout box and you'll see them driving figure eights and they'll understeer a little bit and then they'll kind of whip the car off an e-brake pull and then start burning the tires off? The best way to warm your tires up or to scrub your tires in is to do donuts. Don't clutch kick into the donut, pull the handbrake, whip it, and kind of just roll the power in. If you're doing standing burnouts to warm your tires up, you're going to break something.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to break something.
Break something.
We were going against, we actually would have went against you if once we got past this battle, and we kind of had the battle like taken care of already in the first run. But it was at Detroit, and we went to roll up to the line and go heat the tires up, dropped a hammer, snapped an axle, right on the line rolling up, and we couldn't get it changed in the allotted 5 minutes, so we didn't make it on the podium that round. But yeah, standing burnouts will kill your drift car, so it's fun to do them. Awesome video content, but once you start getting up in the power and you start running some of these stickier tires, the Velinos, the Zestinos, the Zeknovas, the Achilles 123s, and so on and so forth, the standing burnouts will hurt your driveline. So hurt the clutch, hurts a lot of stuff. So you might want to stay away from it.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Cool. So that's kind of a little bit of drift culture and tech tips in the same kind of segment because we talked about a lot, but let's kind of go into more of a culture side of drifting, which we kind of talked about. And I know you've already said you don't like to be like you're not in like a certain fan group. And I know Jelani likes aspects of both, but I'd love to have a debate on LS engines versus JZ engines, since those are the two primary engines that are used in Formula drift cars and high horsepower builds. I mean, obviously you got RBs and stuff like that, but they're still, I wouldn't say they're as relevant right now as the LS and JZ stuff. So if you were starting over today and you were on a budget of say like 10 grand to build a Pro-Am car, are you building a JZ car or are you building an LS car?
I'm buying a stock 350Z and cleaning everybody up with it.
Coming in with the worst sounding engine on the mankind. At first I said those look like fish. Now we're going to talk about how bad they sound. So no, I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
Here come the
I
bees.
Like these, I swear.
There's Bumblebee coming by.
I think with the $10,000 budget, I think that a LS swap is a no-brainer in that sense. But LS versus 2JZ, I mean, it's like a... You know, they're just two different engines. I would love to build a 2JZ car. I would love to build a 2JZ car that was maybe like a street track car, something that wasn't ever a competition car, something that wasn't super, critical. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, I really, really want to build a 2JZ turbo something. But, for competition, LSs make a lot of sense because you can buy parts at the parts store. You can, get anything for them at the parts store.
You can also get parts for JZs at the parts store, though.
True.
They were sold in America, unlike our RBSR counterparts.
Yeah.
So. Now, electrical stuff you will not get same day, though. So think about that. And there's some other things you won't get same day. He has the advantage that 90% of the time he can go to a parts store and get what he needs at that point in time. And if he can't get it at that parts store, then one on the other side of town has it. So
Detroit, 2017, cam sensor went bad. Drove literally 5 minutes to an AutoZone. The hardest part was actually getting the cam sensor out of the block because it was like baked in.
Yeah, we had a crew guy standing on the shock towers, pulling as hard as he could straight up to get that cam sensor out.
But I'll straight up say it's probably definitely easier to make power with the JZ because like LSs aren't really meant to make power as it sits. You know what I'm saying? Like a JZ, like a GTE JZ, is already has a turbo. It's packaged around having a turbo. And the thing that's nice about turbochargers is that you can make a lot of power with a very small form factor, right? A turbocharger is not that big of a thing, and you can make a bunch of power with it. And like I said, a JZ packages well for that, sense of it.
The advantage of the JZ over him in Pro-Am and even in Pro 2, and even with a supercharger in Pro 2, right? So with our JZ, we tuned it around medium boost being the desired power level to run the car at most of the time. So it makes some high exponential power for a relatively not crazy investment. The big money spent on our JZ swap isn't actually for the JZ, but it's to have a reliable, safe fuel system and electrical system that's easy to handle in a motorsports environment, which we run the same fuel system on the JZ. Like, you got the same radium tank, same amount of pumps, same amount of stuff, rear mount radiator, all that stuff's the same. Legitimately, you could take the 2JZ and drop it into this car and plumb it off of the same lines and a lot of the same stuff. And the same amount of money, honestly, is invested into this as the long block configuration with the blower on it, as to with the JZ with the turbo on it. The cost of his blower would be the same as the turbo setup on the JZ. The cost of the fuel system is the same. All of it's the same. I think the only advantage the JZ has with it having the turbocharger on it, and the capability to make the power, is that you can have a 700 horsepower 2JZ for a relatively minimal investment, and usually you only got to run it at about 550, 600. But when we encounter a problem where, man, this thing, the car is gripped up right now at this track, the temperature, everything, the environment that we're in, the car is gripped up, and we don't feel like we make enough power, is we could just reach over and turn the power up and overcome the grip. That's really the only advantage to that. And people will say, oh, well, you can turbo the LS and have that same thing. Yeah, you can, but the packaging is insane on a turbo LS.
That price goes up quite a bit.
And the price goes up, and the plumbing is everywhere.
We strongly considered going, LS turbo. because
We have experience with it, yeah.
I mean,
it work.
it doesn't work you have to do it right. I mean, Hurst does it right. Hurst's works, but the cars that Hurst puts the LSs in have more room to support those turbos because a lot of the thing, when you're thinking about a Pro 2 level car, you're not thinking just of the power number. You're thinking how easy is this to work on? How reliable is this?
When you crash, how much of that plumbing and stuff is up front in the crash area when you do a turbo LS? The JZ, that turbo and all that plumbing and piping is out of the danger zone. It's back in between the shock towers. If you hit it there, your weekend's over. But a lot of these turbo LSs have the turbos up front where the intercoolers are, all the plumbing, everything is up there kind of in the danger zone. And when that stuff gets hit, you saw Matt Fields got put into the wall in Saint Eustache in Canada. The supercharger and all that stuff had to come off. It all got whomped pretty well. So that's something to think about too. In a Pro-Am format, if I had 10 grand to spend, I'm going 1JZ. Because I can put a 30R on a 1JZ for pretty cheap. And that'll get it to 500 horsepower capable, no cams, no nothing, none of that stuff, the VVTi on it. It'd be VVTi to VVTi on it, and increases the torque curve. And then even with all of that money left over, I could probably squeeze a dog box behind it, and I can do a plug and play standalone for $800 ECU master, something cheap. And you can have that done pretty reliable for that price. The downside to that is the cooling system. In the S chassis, there's not a lot of room to put enough cooling in it. And the more power you start making, the more heat you start putting out, and the cooling becomes even more important. So there's pros and cons. But I think if I had to do it, I think I could make it happen with the 1J. And that's me, though. That's me being around drifting for a long time, having the pleasure to work on cars like this, cars like Garrett's, cars. I had a 1J SC300 that I helped with back in 2009. So that's a lot of experience that I know how to maximize my dollar and my investment. I know where the problems are. If I was a novice, more entry-level drifter, definitely going LS. So that's the way I'm going to look at it. If you haven't had the experience or you don't have this big brother and knowledge around you to help you get through some of that stuff, the LS is going to be a way easier platform to get your feet wet in and to deal with. So that's just more sides of it.
Something that Brian, I know you brought up a little while ago. We were talking, and you said there's a higher... I think it was initial cost to a JZ.
There's basically a higher initial cost to get into JZ. And like exactly what Jelani was saying. If you've been around, you've got the spare parts, you've got some knowledge, or maybe that we're building the car for 10 grand, but maybe I've got a little more on this spares budget or something like that, or my operating budget. The JZ just costs a little more to get into. There's just LSs have been swapped into every chassis all over the world. There's just so much out there, and they're so easy to do on a budget to be able to find reliable, cheap parts, because it doesn't matter if you're a drag guy or I road race LSs. So like they're used in every form of racing. And like we were talking about earlier, they're essentially just a modern small block. So when it comes to a pinch, there's small block stuff out there. So you can go to your grandfather's small block garage and probably find some parts that might work for you.
Go out in the parking lot and pull them off your tow vehicle.
Yeah, we've done it. But yeah, so there's a little bit higher initial cost on the JZ because of some standalone situations. Yeah, there are some cheap options. That's not what I recommend for new guys, especially if you're on a budget. You might be trying to tune your car yourself or your buddy, and if they're not as familiar with it, then some of those cheaper ECUs are a little bit harder to use.
Yep.
So you're not going to get as good results, which are going to make those overheating problems worse. They're going to make those other problems worse. So yeah, there's a little bit higher cost initially. Once you get to a certain power level, it's about the same, and it's back and forth, and it really depends what you want to do. But I think it's easier to do the LS on a lower cost reliably.
You can go out, you can get a LS for cheap, Texas Speed cam, Texas Speed ECU tune, and everyone take it to a dyno and take it to the track and run it.
Yeah, there's there's towns that don't have internet that the guys have to call me so I can read an application key to them so they can update their credits because they're tuning in a place that doesn't even have cell phones or to have internet data on their cell phone. So, or in some cases, some of these guys actually don't have a smartphone and they're still tuning LSs. So, that's probably not the tuner I'd recommend to use, but they're out there. Some of them are really smart guys and they do what they do. But yeah, it's so easy to do LS stuff. And, people want to hate on that, and I get it. It's boring. It's cookie cutter, but if it puts you in the seat and if it lets you compete with what the resources you have are, it's hard to argue against.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could just keep your K in your car and put a turbo in a K. Oh.
Yeah, you could. I mean, there's a lot of options for
Yeah,
Pro-Am.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I would love to just build not even build, just like put a couple parts on a 350Z and take it to Pro-Am and just to show people like you don't need a crazy car to do this.
Rolando did it. Rolando did it, man. He earned a Pro 2 license and a naturally aspirated 350Z.
No, I think
you're
Harrison
talking-
is the really good example
Harrison.
of LS because he has basically the same motor I had in my car when it was the 5.3 with a cam.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a LS. It's like a 5.7. I don't even know if it has a cam in it or not. But
Nope.
No, it's a bone stock.
he
No power steering.
he has earned his Pro 2 license multiple times against cars with 700, 800 horsepower, like the Michael Van Schellenbecks, the Fielding Shredders. Like those cars are really fast. I drove against them. They're really fast cars. They're not, here he is like a basic car and just destroying these guys. Like he is so good. And in his car, like he posted last year that he had earned like 2 Pro 2 licenses already, and he had like never even got it aligned. Like this dude, like you don't need.
He earned a profit last year drifting.
Yeah, he literally earned a profit.
He competes in the same FC forever, but he won a chaser, like 3 Garrett turbos, some
Trip
cash,
to Australia.
a trip to Australia, and some cash prizes drifting in Pro-Am. Like you legitimately got a ROI, return on investment, from drifting Pro-Am. That's almost unheard of. And it was in the simplest,
He might be the only guy that's ever done that.
Might be the only guy, and that was in the simplest, most basic
Open
setup
trailer.
car. Open
Like
trailer,
an old OBS Ford.
Yeah, old Ford, same age as you probably. Like,
Yeah.
Like it's insane. So, this is all things to think about. Like we're not giving you the surefire, like this is what you have to do, but just some things to consider when you're starting to spec out your grassroots cars, your entry level Pro-Am cars, and even if you're going on a Pro 2, there's levels to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like he has the same body kit. I saw him the other day painting the wood screws he used to hold it on. He painted the heads of them red. It's like
Yeah.
he has a body kit, but it's been the same body kit for like 4 years. And he's
Car's
always,
presentable.
He always just fixes it, and it's presentable. Like it's that balance. It's not ghetto, and it's not
pretty
overly
ghetto.
nice for no reason. Yeah, but it's not like.
Yeah, I was giving him a hard time.
Yeah.
That was a shot at Harrison.
But like, if there's anybody that I would say would follow as an example in the U.S. right now, it'd be Harrison for sure. Like,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's got a YouTube channel. If you don't know what we're talking about, Harrison Lone Star Drift channel.
Harrison Drifter Kid on Instagram.
Yep, check him out. That's the model right there.
No, seat time is really just you're not going to get better unless you're driving. I mean, I guess for me, it's just been so simple. It's never been about anything but driving. That's what motivates me to work on my car. That's what motivates me to make reliable cars. It's just so I can just drive more. And if you're not, I mean, that's it for me. It's just driving. I would drive anything. If I couldn't afford Pro 2 or Pro-Am or anything, I'd still be out there. If I had to show up in, the most basic thing, I would still be out there. So that's just all it is for me. It's just driving.
And you can see that a lot of guys who take some time off from Pro 2 or Pro-Am, they usually come back in a basic car. And that's because you come from something like this and you realize like this, I can't shred with the homies all day. I can't turn 80 laps in this thing. It's not feasible. But I get back into my 400, 350, 300 horsepower car all day ripping, So I figured that out the hard way. Start out that way.
A lot of us, that's why we're so adamant about trying to help people understand it, because we've been there. We've spent the money, we've made the mistakes, we've been through the growing pains of everything, and we've just, I think it's easy for somebody that hasn't been in our position yet to think the grass is greener. And in a lot of ways it is. I mean, Pro 2 is still really fun, but it's in a different way fun. You have to love the process to have fun in Pro 2, but...
Dang, that was deep.
that was
deep.
I love driving my truck and trailer. I love cleaning my car with a toothbrush. If you don't love that, you're not going to last in pro scene, in my opinion.
And this is not to deter anybody away from Pro 2. So recently, after working around you, working around Garrett, working around Dustin Miles, and all these other guys that we became friends with through this journey, it inspired me to even be like, man, one day this isn't so bad. One day I should go get my seat time in, put my time in, put my work in, and maybe I should strive for this too. Pro 2 is feasible. Normal people can do it. There is a path to it. It's not known. It's not laid out there. I'm hopefully try to expose that so that way some people could figure out like what do you got to do to get your stuff in line to do it. Yes, it takes money, but you can make it happen on a normal man's wages. You know, you just gotta play your cards right. So don't be discouraged away from achieving that Pro 2 dream, but just make sure that's not your main focus when you're first getting started out. Like definitely focus on getting the seat time and having fun and enjoying the journey and the process. Like he said, you know, you do that.
And so, again, thanks guys for watching. Jeff, you have any last final words on, I mean, where can people find you at? What's a little bit about
baby.
your...
Yeah, I mean, you can probably find my social media links in somewhere in the video.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it'll put them in, but I'm also streaming on Twitch lately. I know it's not really drifting related or motorsports related, but I play a lot of Fortnite competitively, so I've been streaming that, so follow me there. And I'll be out at grassroots stuff this summer, and you know, maybe not driving a bunch, but trying to get on maybe the other side of the fence with some organizational stuff and just helping out, maybe coaching a little bit. So
That'd be cool.
yeah, just trying to give back.
Cool. Anything about the program you want to plug?
I mean, man, we got a good program behind us, a lot of good partners, but should be a fun year. Just gonna try to get back to, you know, the basics, make the car easy to drive, make it fun, and just go burn some tires.
Do you think that was something last year that you struggled with, was making the car fun to drive?
Yeah, I mean, the car was really tough to drive last year because we had we came into the series thinking, oh my goodness, we're gonna need to have so much grip to keep up with these cars, and then we like, oh wow, we put way too much grip into this car, so that made it a lot harder for me to do my job. Not that I wasn't a problem, you know, for the first time in the history of me drifting, I got into my own head a lot of times, which I've never done before. So I think that already this year, the mindset's way better. I'm not taking it as seriously, you know, I'm taking it seriously, but you're not overthinking, you're not like...
You're having fun.
Getting yourself worked up for no reason, yeah, so...
Which is what you talked about earlier, is in order to do Pro 2, you have to have a certain, I guess you could say, mentality, or you have to enjoy this. You have to enjoy cleaning your engine bay with a toothbrush. You have to enjoy the driving. You have to enjoy not only driving, but keeping this car like this.
Yeah, you're spending way too much money if you only enjoy the 30 seconds you're out on the track, you know? You gotta have fun doing the whole thing if it's worth it. And you know, that's what we've always said. The minute that I'm not having fun doing this, done. Like, Pro 2 is not something that I'm gonna be doing if I'm not absolutely loving every second of it, so we're gonna try to keep that up.
Awesome. And again, Brian, thanks for all the insight, and again, thanks for watching the podcast, guys, and if you feel like subscribing, that would be awesome. I'd love to get to 1,000. That would actually be kind of cool to get some, 1,000 subscribers. But again, follow us on social media at Daily Driver Media Network on Facebook, on YouTube, Instagram. I'll be following this guy and a whole bunch of other Pro 2 drivers this year in FD, and I mean, there's going to be a ton of cool content coming from us and these guys, Jelani. I mean, we got a lot that we're bringing out. So hopefully you guys stay tuned for more, and again, thanks for watching.